Imagine standing out in the middle of an ancient desert. The sun dips below the horizon, and within minutes, the world is just plunged into this absolute suffocating blackness.
Yeah, complete darkness.
You have no flashlights, you have no street lamps. Out there in the dark, there are predators, enemy armies, and, well, if you believe the ancient Babylonians, actual demons waiting for you.
It is a terrifying thought, honestly.
Right. Welcome to Reformed Thinking. I am your host, and if you are listening to this right now on your commute or sitting at your desk, you likely have a screen illuminating your face.
Most of us do, yeah.
But today, we are turning off the artificial light. We are sitting down at the table, just the three of us, opening up a stack of ancient Near Eastern dictionaries, Hebrew lexicons, and linguistic notes to look at a single noun.
And the word is Laylah, which translates to night.
Yes, Laylah. The mission of this deep dive is to examine these lexical entries to uncover how the specific word functioned in the ancient world and, how it shaped the biblical author's understanding of reality.
It is a brilliant way to understand the underlying theology of the text.
I agree.
Tracking a single word across its ancient usages reveals the actual framework of their worldview. We are looking past the English translation to see the raw material the authors used to express divine truth.
We are going to cover massive ground today. I mean, we will move from the literal tracking of time to intense midnight temple vigils.
Which is a fascinating topic on its own.
It really is. We will walk through the dark metaphors of divine judgment, and we are even going to touch upon an ancient Babylonian night demon that somehow made its way into the margins of these academic lexicons.
I am looking forward to that part.
So to start, the core information we have in front of us shows the Hebrew word Laylah. The sources list variations like layil, the construct form lel, and the plural lilith. And the text tells us this word appears approximately 225 times in the Hebrew scriptures.
That is a massive linguistic footprint for a single noun.
Yeah, quite a lot.
The sources also show us this is not an isolated Hebrew concept. It is a pan-Semitic word.
Okay, let's unpack this Semitic language family. Because the cognates listed in the source notes, well, they read like a map spanning the entire ancient Middle East.
They really do.
For instance, the Ugaritic texts, which come from the coast of modern-day Syria, have the word hel. The Canaanite language uses lel. In Aramaic, it is Laylah.
Right.
Arabic has laylun or laylatun. Ethiopic uses lelit. And the Akkadian language used by the ancient Assyrians and Babylonians in Mesopotamia uses liliatu or laylatu for evening.
It is wild to see it laid out like that.
It seems the sound of the night was universally recognized across that entire hemisphere.
Think about the mechanics of how language spreads and maintains its shape. We are talking about diverse cultures separated by vast, hostile deserts and mountain ranges.
Yeah, completely different worlds, really.
Exactly. I mean, these people had different pantheons, different political structures, and different diets.
Yeah.
Yet when the sun went down, the sound they made to describe the encroaching darkness was virtually identical.
It is like the linguistic DNA of the Middle East.
Precisely. It did not have to travel from one empire to another through trade routes. It was the bedrock vocabulary that existed before the empires even formed.
That brings us to something fascinating about the structure of the word itself. The lexicon points out a grammatical feature called the he paragoge.
Yes.
It states that adding the letter he to the end of a word in ancient Hebrew, which creates that ah sound at the end of Laylah, often indicates direction or location.
That changes the entire conceptual framework of the word.
How so?
Well, for the modern mind, time is a static container. We view the night as a block of hours on a schedule. But the sources suggest that originally that grammatical ending meant by night or nightward.
Nightward.
Yeah, it was a direction in time you were moving toward the dark.
So it functioned as an active destination, like you are walking into the night.
That is right. The language shifted over centuries of use. The directional ending coalesced and fused with the root word. So the whole word eventually came to mean the night itself.
Okay.
But that origin reveals a mindset where time is not something you passively experience. Time is a geography you traverse. Moving nightward means you are stepping out of the safety of the visible world and walking into an environment where your autonomy is stripped away.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. But I want to push back on something I noticed in the lexicons regarding the root of the word.
Go for it.
The note suggests the primitive root is possibly lul, implying an obscurity or a twist away from the light. However, the lexicographers explicitly state that this root meaning is dubious.
They do, yeah.
So my question is this. If this word is so incredibly common across all these ancient languages, spoken by millions of people across millennia from Egypt to Babylon, how can its root be dubious?
That is a very perceptive question. It actually highlights the limits of modern lexicography when dealing with ancient human experience.
Meaning what exactly? Oh, wait, I mean, meaning what in this context?
Words that describe the most basic, fundamental human realities are what linguists call primitive words. We are talking about concepts like day, night, water, earth, and fire.
The building blocks of life.
Right. These words are so old, they predate the highly structured grammatical systems that developed later in human history.
So you are saying we cannot find the origin point because the origin point is older than recorded language itself.
That is the situation.
Mm.
It is like trying to find the historical origin of the act of breathing. It has always been present.
Wow.
When linguists say a root is dubious, they do not mean the word is meaningless. They mean the word is so old, it defies their standard tools for grammatical dissection.
I am curious about that proposed root lull, though. Even if the linguists call it dubious, the idea of a twist away from the light seems highly specific.
It does.
Is it entirely possible that later scholars are just over-spiritualizing a simple meteorological term? Like maybe a twist just means the sun went down? Why does it have to carry this heavy theological weight of turning away from the light?
We have to look at how the ancient Near Eastern mind understood the physical universe. They did not have a heliocentric model of the solar system.
Right, no telescopes.
They did not view the sunset as a mechanical rotation of a planetary sphere. For them, the transition from day to night was a physical, active event.
A literal turning.
Yes, the Earth was turning its back on the light. And in their theological framework, light was always associated with order, provision, and divine favor.
So a physical turning away from the light naturally carried a theological implication.
It was not an over-spiritualization on their part at all. For them, the physical and the spiritual were completely integrated.
That synthesis of the physical and spiritual brings a whole new weight to the word. It is an active turning. This universal primitive word was not an abstract concept for philosophers to debate in academic halls. The biblical texts use it to build the very architecture of reality.
We see this clearly when we look at the boundaries of ancient time.
Right.
Laylah is presented as the literal physical opposite of day, which is the Hebrew word yom. The sources direct us to Genesis chapter 1, verse 5, where this alternation of day and night is explicitly described as divinely ordained.
The text says, God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. It is a sovereign decree mapping out the boundaries of existence.
It is the ultimate expression of divine sovereignty over the physical universe. The cycle of the sun and moon was not a random astronomical accident.
No.
It was a decree from a sovereign creator who ordained the strict boundaries of time. And because God ordained it, the ancient world used this alternation to measure the absolute limits of human endurance.
The lexicons provide numerous examples of this measurement. They list phrases like day and night or night and day as a way to represent continuous, limitless duration.
Yes, it covers everything.
Like Deuteronomy 28, verse 66 uses the phrase to describe a constant state of dread, night and day. 1 Kings 8, verse 29 uses night and day to describe how God's eyes are continuously open toward the temple.
That phrase leaves no gaps in reality. When the biblical text says something happens day and night, it means it is unceasing. It is bound only by the decree of God himself.
It covers the active hours of human labor and the passive hours of human vulnerability.
They also utilized very specific temporal markers within the dark hours. The lexicons show the phrase hasot halayla, which translates to half the night.
We would call it midnight.
Right. We see this phrase in Exodus chapter 11, verse 4, right before the final plague in Egypt. They also divided the night into watches, as seen in Psalm 90, verse 4.
Here is where it gets really interesting. I want to pause and think about the physical reality of that watch. If you are standing on the wall of Jerusalem in the year 1000 BC, you are dealing with the cold stone, the absolute lack of visibility, and the heavy fatigue of your own body.
You're straining to hear the sound of an approaching enemy.
Yes. So contrast that ancient concept of tracking time via watches and light or darkness with the modern listener's reality of digital clocks and exact minutes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, time was measured by the physical endurance and alertness of those vulnerable human beings waiting for the dawn. A watch was not just a block of time. It was an assignment of survival.
You are holding the line against the chaos of the dark.
Speaking of measuring endurance, the sources highlight a highly specific, recurring duration. We see the phrase 40 days and 40 nights everywhere in the text.
We see it in Genesis with the flood. We see it in Exodus with Moses on the mountain. We see it in 1 Kings with Elijah.
Scholars often debate whether that phrase represents a mathematically precise numeral or a symbolic representation of a complete period.
Right, the literal versus symbolic debate.
But the theological function is clear in either case. It represents a crucible. It signifies a totality of testing.
Let us look at that literary pattern. Moses, Noah, and Elijah do not just wait for 40 days. They are surviving a duality.
That is a perceptive way to phrase it. They are existing through the visible active day where they possess some illusion of control, and they are enduring through the dark, vulnerable night where they are completely dependent on sovereign provision.
Doing that 40 times over strips away any reliance on the self.
It requires an absolute reliance on the grace of the Creator to see the next sunrise.
And here is where the linguistic notes get incredibly specific. The sources point out a bizarre idiom found in Jonah chapter 4, verse 10.
Oh, the plants.
Yeah, the Hebrew phrase is bin Laylah, which literally translates to son of a night. It is used to describe the plant God appointed to grow over Jonah to give him shade.
The lexicon defined this phrase as something growing and maturing extremely fast overnight.
I picture a modern time-lapse video.
That is a great analogy.
You set up a camera and you watch a seed sprout, grow a stalk, produce broad leaves, and reach full maturity in a matter of seconds on the screen. The ancient writer is giving us that exact visual with this highly efficient idiom.
It is instantaneous, explosive growth ordained by God while the prophet sleeps.
Son of a night.
It also highlights the complete lack of human contribution to the process. Jonah did not plant the seed. He did not water it. He did not tend it during the day.
He just woke up and it was there.
The plant was a son of a night, meaning it was a product of the dark hours when human labor is entirely suspended. It is a pure demonstration of divine providence operating outside of human effort.
I want to synthesize what we have discussed so far. If I am understanding the ancient mindset correctly, time is a physical entity pressing in on them. It is not an abstract container. The night forces a recognition of reality.
It strips away the illusion of autonomy.
Right. You have articulated the core mechanism perfectly. For the ancient person, you could not negotiate with the sunset.
No, you could not. When the sun went down, the reality of your existence changed drastically. You were forced to recognize your own physical limitations.
So what does this all mean? If the night completely strips away your autonomy, how does a vulnerable human actually survive those 8 to 12 hours of pitch black?
You basically have two options. You can hide or you can pray.
Which leads us directly into our next section, looking at what actually happened during the Laylah. The sources reveal it was rarely a time of peaceful rest.
We tend to think of night as the time when the world shuts down and goes to sleep. But the biblical text presents the night as a period of intense activity.
The lexicons are full of this activity. The night is categorized as a time for pious desires, prayer, praise, and meditation.
Often listed in parallel with daytime prayers, actually.
Psalm 16, verse 7, talks about being instructed in the hours of darkness. The psalmist says his heart instructs him in the night seasons. We also see a specific night service in the temple.
Psalm 134, verse 1 says, "Come, bless the Lord, all you servants of the Lord who stand by night in the house of the Lord."
I want you to picture the sensory experience of that temple watch. You have the smell of the incense and the residual smell of the sacrifices from the day before.
You have the flicker of torches reflecting off the gold overlay of the sanctuary.
Outside those walls, the city is asleep and vulnerable. Inside, these priests are keeping a physical and spiritual vigil.
It is a staggering act of faith to bless the Creator when you cannot see His creation around you. You are praising the God of light while standing in the physical darkness.
It is an active declaration that God's sovereignty does not pause when the sun goes down.
He rules the night just as He rules the day.
The sources also point to a night of watches, the Leil Shimurim mentioned in Exodus 12, verse 42. This is the night of the Passover.
This is the moment God struck the firstborn of Egypt and delivered the nation of Israel.
That specific night is the ultimate demonstration of God acting in the darkness. Human beings were at their absolute most vulnerable.
They were huddled inside their homes behind doors marked with blood. They had no military defense. They had no strategy. They simply had a promise.
Outside those doors, God is executing sovereign judgment upon the Egyptians and sovereign grace upon the Israelites simultaneously. The entire trajectory of redemptive history hinges on what happens in those dark hours.
The Israelites were commanded to stay awake and observe that night. It was a night of intense, terrified anticipation.
They were instructed to eat the meal with their sandals on their feet and their staffs in their hands.
They were fully dressed for a journey they could not yet see, waiting for the command to move out into the dark.
The sources also list the night as the primary time for divine revelation. We see dreams of the night, the halom, Laylah, in Genesis 20 and 31.
We see visions of the night, the haze on Laylah in Job 4 and Isaiah 29.
There is a very specific reason why revelation often occurs at night in these texts. During the day, the human mind is occupied with labor, survival, and the visual noise of the sunlit world.
When the sun sets, that physical distraction is removed. The mind is quieted.
But the lexicons show that this quietness also brings immense vulnerability. The night is the setting for sudden assault, deep weeping, and misery.
Job chapter 7, verse 3 specifically mentions nights of suffering or nights of misery, using the phrase leoth amal.
Job provides a stark example of this vulnerability. When the sun goes down, his physical agony and his spiritual wrestling are amplified.
The night offers him no comfort. It only offers him extended dread. He is left alone with his pain and his questions.
I am looking at this incredibly high level of activity in the dark. It is a busy, intense period, and I want to address the listener directly here. Imagine a world without artificial light. Why do all the most intense, emotionally charged events, the divine visions, the sudden military attacks, the deep, agonizing weeping, why do they happen specifically during the Laylah?
This raises an important question. It exposes the psychological reality of the ancient human condition. Without the safety that daylight provides, human vulnerability peaks.
You cannot see the enemy approaching your camp. You cannot see the predator in the field.
Your illusion of control over your environment is entirely stripped away.
You are laid bare. There is no hiding from your own frailty.
Therefore, you are forced into a posture of complete dependency. You are either seeking God in the sanctuary vigils, crying out for his sustaining grace, or you are utterly exposed to sudden destruction.
The night does not create the vulnerability.
No, the night simply reveals the vulnerability that is always present, even during the day.
That physical reality of darkness transitions seamlessly in the biblical text into a theological reality. Moving from the literal to the figurative, the lexicons show that Laylah takes on a gloomy, terrifying, metaphorical sense.
The physical darkness becomes the vocabulary for spiritual devastation.
It is a natural linguistic progression. If the physical night represents a lack of vision and a lack of safety, the metaphorical night represents the complete absence of divine protection.
The sources state that the metaphorical night represents avenging calamity, misery, and judgment without divine guidance.
We see specific, chilling phrases. Micah chapter 3, verse 6 says, "Therefore it shall be night to you without vision."
Isaiah 21, verse 11 asks, "Watchman, what is left of the night?" The lexicon translates that as, "What hour of the night of calamity is it?"
In Job 36, verse 20, the lexicon suggests the text is referring to the night of death itself.
It is the final darkness that swallows human existence.
To be fair to the entirety of the sources, there is a noted exception. Rarely the word is used in a positive metaphorical sense.
Oh, right, Isaiah 16.
Yeah, Isaiah 16, verse 3 speaks of the shadow of Zion acting as a protective shade, like the night, offering relief from the scorching heat of persecution. But overwhelmingly, the metaphor is one of dread. Let us look closely at that phrase from Micah 3, verse 6. Night without a vision.
Okay.
I want to think about the mechanics of that theology. Imagine a ship captain steering a vessel on the open sea. During the day, they use the sun. At night, they use the stars or a compass to maintain their heading.
Right, they need fixed points.
Suddenly, a heavy fog rolls in, blocking the stars, and the compass shatters. It is not just that the captain is scared of the dark, it is that all direction and order have been actively removed. They are left subject to the chaotic currents of the ocean.
That analogy perfectly captures the ancient Near Eastern understanding of chaos. The sea was the ultimate symbol of untamed chaos. Losing your navigation meant you were handed over to that chaos.
So how does the text move from night just being a neutral time on the clock, a natural part of the 24-hour cycle, to being the ultimate symbol of God's avenging judgment?
We have to tie this directly back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. The alternation of day and night is divinely ordained by God's sovereign decree. God spoke light into existence, and he called the light day.
Light represents God's order.
Yes, his active favor, his revelation, and his illuminating grace. Therefore, A metaphorical night, a time of calamity without comfort, is not just bad luck. It is a specific judicial withdrawal of that divine guidance.
It is God removing the compass.
That is right. When Micah says night without a vision, he is prophesying against the corrupt leaders and false prophets of Israel. God is telling them that because they have rejected his truth, he is withdrawing his light.
He is leaving them to their own devices in the dark.
The judgment is the actual absence of God's illuminating grace. He hands them over to their own desires.
It is a terrifying reality. When God hands a people over to their own darkness, that is the night of calamity. And the night of death is the absolute absence of that physical and spiritual light in this world.
The writers understood that without God's active, sustaining word, creation naturally reverts back to the dark, formless void described in Genesis 1, verse 2.
It is a sobering concept. It frames the entire human experience as utterly dependent on the mercy of God to provide the light.
It really does.
As we dig further into these lexical notes, we find something on the fringes of the dark that is quite unexpected. The sources contain a fascinating tangential entry.
The Lilith entry.
Yes, right alongside the definitions for Laylah, we find an entry for the word Lilith, found in Isaiah 34, verse 14.
This is where ancient linguistics, theology, and folklore collide. It requires very careful handling of the text.
The lexicon defines Lilith as a female night demon haunting desolate Edom. It notes that John Milton famously called her a night hag in English literature.
Night hag, wow.
The source states that the name is probably borrowed from the Babylonian word lilitu. But here is the crucial linguistic distinction the notes make. The source explicitly states that the connection between the demon Lilith and the Hebrew word Laylah is, quote, perhaps only apparent. A popular etymology.
That is a critical warning from the lexicographers. They are telling us not to make a false linguistic connection just because two words sound similar.
I have to admit, I am highly intrigued by this entry. Wait, there is an actual night demon listed in these academic linguistic sources? How does a Babylonian demon make its way into the Hebrew text of Isaiah, and why do people incorrectly assume it comes from the Hebrew word for night?
We need to break down the concept of popular etymology. This is a phenomenon where people naturally connect words that sound similar and feel related to their daily experience, even if the historical roots of the words are completely different.
It happens in every language.
Precisely. The Babylonian culture possessed a massive pantheon of demons and spirits. The Lilitu was originally a spirit associated with the wind and destructive storms.
So it wasn't even a night creature at first.
Correct. Over time, in the folklore of Mesopotamia, that spirit evolved into a terrifying night demon that preyed on the vulnerable. The Israelites, living in the ancient Near East, were well aware of the cultural folklore of their surrounding neighbors.
So Isaiah is using a term his audience would immediately recognize as something horrifying.
Yes. When Isaiah describes the total, desolate destruction of Edom, he uses the imagery of the most desolate, terrifying creatures inhabiting the ruins. He lists jackals, ostriches, and the Lilith, the night creature.
Let us consider the prophetic context of Edom. Edom represented the perennial enemy of God's people. Isaiah is painting a picture of total abandonment.
He's saying this place will be so forsaken by God, so completely devoid of his light and order, that only the terrors of the dark will dwell there. It is a return to absolute chaos.
The linguistic connection to Laylah is a psychological one made by the populace, not a grammatical one. The terror of the literal night, the Laylah, the vulnerability, the fear of sudden assault in the dark that we discussed earlier.
That specific fear made it incredibly easy for the average ancient person to link their word for night to the Babylonian night demon Lilith.
It sounds the same. It evokes the same dread. They are trying to put a face and a name to the unseen terrors lurking in the dark.
Even if the linguistic roots are totally different, the psychological root is identical. It is the fear of the dark and what hides within it. It shows us how heavily the physical reality of the night impacted the human imagination and their cultural vocabulary.
They needed a vocabulary to express the horror of a world without God's light.
Exactly. I mean, they needed a way to articulate that dread.
This has been a massive analysis of a single word. Let us pull all of this together for the listener. We have sat here looking at these ancient lexicons, and the theological framework we have uncovered is staggering.
It really reframes how you read the Old Testament.
We started with a primitive word, Laylah, spoken across the entire ancient Near East. We tracked it through the literal measuring of midnights and those mathematically precise 40-day spans of endurance.
We uncovered its role as the active backdrop for intense temple vigils and sudden, terrifying assaults.
We saw how it transitioned into the ultimate metaphor for divine judgment, the terrifying withdrawal of God's illuminating grace. We even saw how the sheer psychological dread of the dark led ancient people to find demons in the margins of their vocabulary to describe a land forsaken by the Creator.
The lexical data gives us the framework. The biblical text gives us the reality. The ancient writers understood the night as a physical boundary ordained by God.
It is a time where human weakness is fully exposed.
And divine sovereignty is recognized as the only source of preservation.
If you are listening to this right now, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We have seen how in the ancient texts, the night, the Laylah, was a time of acute awareness. You were highly aware of your physical vulnerability. You were highly aware of your desperate need for divine protection.
You are highly aware of the dark.
Today, you and I can banish the physical night with the simple flip of a light switch. We have glowing screens in our pockets that keep the dark at bay 24 hours a day. Does our modern ability to artificially erase the darkness make us falsely confident?
That is the question.
Does our technological control over the physical light blind us to the true spiritual watches of the night that the ancient writers understood so clearly?